हरि ओम। ओम सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयम् नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलीनानतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। We are in the fourth pada, Kaivalya pada of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Stated earlier, the Kaivalya pada is the pure philosophical aspect of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. What it means is the pure philosophy that supports the Sankhyan concept, which has been accepted by yoga, is elaborately explained here after Samadhi pada, Sadhana pada, and Vibhuti pada. The subject under discussion is to precisely find out why Purusha or Atman is so difficult to fathom. What is the way to know the ultimate truth, which itself means Purusha or Atman?
Progress.
The entire scriptures are replete with the word Atman, Atman. It cannot be described. It is only Neti, Neti, etc. But we need to understand why it is so, and this why is answered in this particular pada, the Kaivalya pada. In the earlier discussions, we saw whether the existence of objects in the world is real or imaginary. Now we ourselves know that Gaudapadacharya, he was Ajatavadi. What it means is, he said the world doesn't exist. World was never there. It never existed. We felt it, but it is actually not there. Ajatavada, something which has not come out at all. Then we have people who say that how can you say something so real, which we are living, can be so imaginary or illusory? So we have two extremes. Those who say the world has not happened at all. There is no world at all. And there are others who says there is absolute world because I feel it. And then there is a third thought, a unique thought by the great Shankaracharya, which says no, it is not there and it is there. Both. Sat, Asat, Vilakshan. Our problem is, who is the person who is talking truth? Now, Gaudapadacharya is nothing else but Guru's Guru of Shankaracharya. He cannot be wrong. Shankaracharya cannot be wrong. And our experience cannot be wrong.
Sanjay, if you can unmute yourself.
If I am not wrong, Shankaracharya is not wrong, and Gaudapada is not wrong, then what is the actual position of the world? And world means cosmos as well as the objects. Does the world really exist? It does not exist, or it exists as well as does not exist. What is the truth? And that is the objective of Kaivalyapada, in which it is discussing what is called idealism and realism. One stream says the objects do not exist, they are just out of our mind, it's mind's creation. Yes, you do feel it, but they're not there. The tree is not there, the mountain is not there, it's in your mind. And when you have it in mind, whether you have the object or not, you will feel it. And that's the creation. Many a times in our minds, we do visualize things, imagine things which are not existing. Einstein was visualizing the gravity as nothing else but a stretched blanket. Now, it's not there, but he visualized it. And not only he visualized it, he could come out with a solid postulate out of it, some theorem out of it called theory of relativity. What it means is, it is quite possible that all I see, including today's talk and your interaction with you people and the presence of Pradeep Jain, it could all be imaginary. Simply a support by everyone who is imagining does not make it real. This is one way of thinking. And another way of thinking is, no, they are absolutely real. I am real, the object is real, the mountain is real, the stone is real, the tree is real. There's nothing imaginary about it. So we have two strong contenders on either side. And then there is a middle thought that has come from Shankaracharya that no, it is there, but it is not there. And then if you see what the Patanjali Maharaj wants to say in this Sankhya Tattva Jnana, which he has elucidated in these sutras that are under consideration, the 19th sutra says, Na Tattva Abhasam Drushyatvat. What it means is, every object is nothing else but an imagination when seen transcendently, but every object is true and real when it is seen empirically. A very profound statement. Does the world exist or not? The world does not have any existence when seen from transcendental point of view, but it is real when seen from transactional point of view. Now, what is this? What is this mix of two things? What does it mean? For the world or the cosmos or the object to exist, we need essentially two things, space and time. If there is no space, if there is no time, nothing can exist. In fact, the space-time combination is what Prakriti is. Akashat, Vayu, Vayudagni, etc. Akashat, space was the first thing created. And then time entered into it. Moment we have space and time, we get forms and names, Nama Rupa. Now, for us, it is utterly impossible to imagine anything which doesn't have space and time. Can we imagine anything which doesn't have space and time? We cannot even imagine it, because our imagination itself is plagued in space and time. I hope I am making it clear to understand. To think means to think in space and time. Our thinking, our thoughts, our mind which produces thinking, or our intellect which gives us thoughts, is essentially forbidden, prohibited to go beyond space and time. Once you are on a horse, you can only know the speed, the trotting of the horse. You cannot know how a plane moves, because these two are different things. You have to be astride the plane. You are now astride the horse. And we are only having one vehicle with us, which is called buddhi. So for us, all that we know is only through buddhi, only through mind, only through chitta. There is nothing that we know other than knowing through chitta. In fact, through chitta we know. So knowing and through chitta are exclusive prerogatives of we as humans. We cannot even imagine knowing without chitta and something which is not knowing. I know it is getting slowly complicated, but that is what the subject of Kaivalyapada is. It's a threadbare discussion about the nature of Atman or the Purush. So far, we have only heard in Bhagavad Gita, and we have, like a rote, we have parroted it out everywhere that, Sapariyagat, Sashukram, he is very pure, he is very clean, he is unmodifiable. Atman never is interested in anything, yet he creates this universe, but he is not into it. Everything is in him. All this we have just learned at a superficial level. Now the time has come to know how. What is the modus operandi, how it happens. And that is why we need to know that, first of all, everything that we know in this world is essentially plagued in space and time, one. Two, it is perceived only through mind. And three, what we perceive through mind, we call it as knowledge. That means the entire cosmos that we are in is essentially a thing which is perceived by the mind through its intelligence, and it creates the impressions of these objects in its own bosom, and that is what the mind calls it as world. What is Dr. Jadhav's world? Whatever his mind is able to perceive about the objects and living and the non-living things, and that's his world. Mind well, that's not the real world. A 2-year-old child perceives the world its own ways, in which he has a mother, perhaps a father, no friend, no enemy, because that's his perception of his mind. So for him, the world is the cradle, the milk, the drinking, the crying, playfully jumping the feet here and there. This is his perceived world, because his ability of his mind to perceive the objects at that point of age or time is like that. You grow as an adult, now the mind perceives the things in a different way, the definition of world changes. So two things become very clear. What we perceive as world is to the extent and tune of the perception ability of the mind. That means every object in the world creates an impression upon me, and this impression need not be same for everyone. What an object does to me, a tree may be same as an object, but the same tree can be painful for me, happy for somebody else, neutral for the third person. That means it is the mind that alters the perception of an object. It is not that the object alters the perception of the mind. That means the object is known to the extent the mind is altered, impressed. That means we will never know an object in completeness because of our inability of our intellect or the mind to grasp or grapple the object in its entirety. So we always have a hodgepodge, piecemeal impression about everything around us, and then collective collage of these impressions is our world. Once this is clear to us, supposing that I decide to perceive the objects of the world without the help of the mind, how the world will be? This is all imagination, sometimes very difficult, but think about it. Right now, everything I'm seeing through a binocular. So the binocular is magnifying the things and showing it to me. I remove the binocular, the vision changes because I'm not able to perceive it. Similarly, the medium of mind, if it is removed, and if you see the world, if the world seeing can be there at that stage, we don't know. It's not called seeing also, because seeing, experiencing, watching, reacting, responding is all mind activity. We are talking about looking at the world without the presence of the mind. Now, that is the time when all objects in this world are seen or experienced, because both these worlds are useless there, because seeing, experiencing is again mind activity. So that time what happens? We can't describe. Why? Something that is not experienced cannot be described. Something that is not experienced cannot be described. And everything that we are, as long as we are in this world, it is an experienced thing. That means our world is nothing else but my experience through my mind of the things around me. Its truth is never guaranteed. Why? Because if truth is guaranteed, then every mind in this world should have perceived the same thing in the same manner. Every one of us perceive the world in a different way. That is why somebody is happy, at the same time somebody is unhappy. If the mind is perceiving the object in a right manner, everybody would have been either happy or unhappy. It doesn't happen. Surprisingly, the realized people, their perception of world is identical. Whether it is Tukaram Maharaj, Gyaneshwar Maharaj, Gurudev, Tapovan Maharaj, Shivananda Maharaj, Vivekananda, everybody says, it is same, it is like this, it is like this. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanevani pishyata. That means they are the one who are able to see the world the way it is actually, but not through the mind. Then through what? Through something which cannot be described. Why can't be described? Because anything that is described is an experience. We cannot have knowledge without experience. And existence of knowledge without experience is something unknown to us. Whenever there is a knowledge out of experience, words are used to describe it. Whenever there is knowledge without experience, words are not there to describe it. That is why it is called neti neti. What is there on the sun can't be described. So on sun, what is there on the sun? that which is not there on the earth. The only description we can give is what is there on the sun, that which is not on the earth. What is there? What is the knowledge? What is the experience when the knowledge is there without the mind? That which is not there when the mind is there. So everything that is there through mind has to be negated to describe that, although it is not the right description. Nothing in this world is pure. So we call him Shuddha. Everything in this world is assemblage of parts, Bhuta Sanghat. So we call that as Nacha Bhuta Sanghataha. Everything in this world is limited by space. That is not limited by space. We say that Vibhur Vyapyaha. It is not the description of that entity, because it is not even an entity. Any word that you use has to come from experiential knowledge, and experiential knowledge cannot describe something which is unexperienced yet present. First of all, something exists without experience is difficult to fathom. Can there be existence of something which is not experienceable? It is. Then how can I know it? If the word know can be used, which is not a right word, then only when you have ability to transcend or go beyond experienced things, you will come to know that which cannot be experienced. Then how do I transcend this experiential world? That is what the yoga is all about. So first, fundamentally, the Yoga Sutra says, na tattva abhasam drushyatvat. This sutra means the chitta is not swayam prakashak being drushya swarup. Now we are coming to what is called drushya vivek, or drashta and drushya. Drushya means that which requires someone to enlighten. That which requires someone to enlighten. Now we are going to make some statements which we need to really ponder with deep concentration. That which is seen cannot be seer. That which is drushya cannot be drashta. That which is enlightened cannot be enlightener. That means every drushya requires somebody to enlighten it. For this object to become enlightened, I require intellect. So for this, intellect is the enlighter. All right. But is intellect the real enlighter? Because by itself it cannot do anything. So somebody enlightens the intellect so that in turn this object gets enlightened. So the real enlighter is lying behind the mind, behind the chitta. Unfortunately or fortunately, the process happens with such a speed that it appears as if intellect apprehended it. Though intellect is also a drushya. Again, drushya cannot enlighten by itself. This object on its own will enlighten. Never happen. There has to be somebody to enlighten this. It's called Anubhava Uddipak. Every Anubhava has to have Anubhava Uddipak. Every experience has to have enlighter of the experience. Because if there is no enlighter required, then enlightened and enlighter will become one. An enlighter and enlightened cannot become one. Like in a statement or in a sentence, karta and karma cannot be one. Unless karma is separate, karta is not established. So enlighter and enlightened, drushya and drashta, the relationship we have to understand. If enlightened is not different than enlighter, then experience cannot take place. If enlightened is not different than the enlighter, then experience cannot take place. We are coming to a very important point in Advaita philosophy also. The differentiation of object and subject is must for knowledge. Subject is the one who gets the knowledge of the object. So the relationship between object and subject has to be of subject-object relationship to know. The knowing, the experience, anubhava, is possible when two are presumed. One enlightened, one enlighter. At a time when enlighter and enlightened are one, experience is not possible. That is why Atma Prakash knows everything. Now, knows word is used because we don't have any other word. But it is not experience, because Atma Prakash or Atman is enlighter, and it enlightens everything simultaneously. The enlightened and enlightened are same. And when they are same, then how can you say there are two things existing? That is why he is Vibhur Vyapya. He is not like a king sitting in the sky with his subjects all over. No. He is everything, everything is him. How? Because enlighter and enlightened are existing simultaneously. Since they exist simultaneously, there is no experience because there is no knowing. For knowing to happen, there has to be a distinguishing point between enlightened and enlightened. So druk and drush is possible, then only experience takes place, and that is why when the druk or the Atman or the Purusha lends its light or enlightening ability to the Chitta, it is called intelligizing the Chitta, because otherwise Chitta is an absolutely hopeless object. It is exactly same as this. Every object in the universe and mind is same. The only difference is, by its nature, Chitta is able to be the first one in the line to grapple or grab the Purusha's light, because of which it throws on the object and comes to know the object. We are trying to see how the knowledge process takes place. The enlighter, the flame, the Deepa Jyoti is behind. It is not interested in giving light to anybody, not taking away light from anybody. It is just shining like a sun in the sky. No purpose whatsoever. Its presence is its purpose. Then comes in the way a transparent thing, Sphatika called Chitta. Now Chitta, because of its Sphatika ability, being a crystal of a pure nature, is able to immediately grasp the light. Because of this borrowed light, it is able to throw it upon different objects. And when the borrowed light by the Chitta is thrown on the objects, the object gets known. It appears that the Chitta has known the object, yet Chitta has become capable of knowing the object because of this borrowed light. So in virtual capacity, it is the Purusha who is doing the bhoga of the object or seeing the object, although he is not inclined in the bhoga. The bhoga happens. A monk is crossing a wedding hall. So somebody from the wedding runs with food and gives it to the monk and makes a statement, the monk attended the wedding. The monk is not interested in attending the wedding. He just passed by and immediately this man grabbed, caught hold of him and gave him the food. The food is an object. The man who ran is nothing else but the chitta. The monk is the consciousness. So the fundamental aspect is enlightened, if not different than the enlighter, experience cannot take place. And since there is no possibility of experience in the ultimate enlighter, he is supposed to be indescribable. Every enlightened thing is parinami. Parinami means vikara vasha. Vika, change. Every enlightened thing is vikara vasha or parinami. Now we all know a brick becomes dust, dust becomes brick, brick becomes something else, and the tree becomes, and then the tree, the leaves fall, and the fruit comes, and the fruit dries, and the seed comes out, and it gets planted. Everything is flux and changing. That is what Prakriti is all about. We saw that. In fact, we apparently see a steady world around us. We see a TV, we see a cabinet, we buy a cabinet. We do not know that there is nothing called cabinet or TV. It is nothing else but Prakriti in Triguna, in the flux. It's moving forward. Today's cabinet is not tomorrow's cabinet. Tomorrow it is dust and again something different out of it. So there is a constant molding happening. It's a huge cauldron, a huge oven where things are boiling. Different shapes are coming up, again going back into the liquid, again they are forming different shapes. That is how Prakriti is constantly changing or flowing all around us. This is called modification. And modification because Prakriti is made up of three gunas and gunas are chanchala. There is no static aspect to the gunas. The gunas is constantly bound to change. The cells, the tissues, the organs, the man, the animals, the kingdoms, everything is under continuous flux of change because of its constituent called trigunas. Trigunas itself is Prakriti. What it means is everything that is parinami is drushya. And taking the same logic, we come to the conclusion, since the mind changes, since the mind, chitta is parinami, modifiable, chitta is also enlightened, not enlighter. Why so much of discussion on chitta as enlightened and not enlighter? Because Buddhist philosophy feels that there is no Atman, chitta itself is Atman. Because they say beyond mind there is nothing. So mind itself is Atman. Because mind enlightens everything. Advaita and yoga refutes it, says that no, mind also is a part of Prakriti. So it is precisely same as any object anywhere. Yes, there is a difference in the quality of the object. It is not as dumb as a stone, but it is one of the most pristine and pure crystal. But the fact remains that it is also an organic thing. May it be crystal. The diamond looks shiny, but it is carbon. It may not look like a coal, but they are same. It is the same carbon which came as coal, charcoal, and came as diamond. Now, by looking at them, you may see the difference, but essentially they are same. Similarly, all objects in the world, although become known because of chitta, chitta itself is an object of that type. May be different in some aspects. So that means we come to two important conclusions. Who is enlighter? That is truth. We are trying to find out what is truth. That means who is the ultimate thing? What is the ultimate thing? What is the essence? Who is the enlighter? The enlighter, to be called an enlighter, there are two conditions that should be met. One, he should not need anybody else to enlighten, first part. And second, he should not be subject to vikar or modification. Anything that modifies would mean it is drushya, enlightened. So non-modification and not requiring anyone else to enlighten is the criteria of the enlighter. That is how, as long as modification is there, enlighter can never be known or can never be intuitively perceived. We are using these words know, etc., just because we don't have any other words, because it is not knowing again. It's not an experiential knowledge. So the simple logic now that the Patanjali Maharaj has come through Sankhya philosophy is, in order to know that which is enlighter and not modifiable, you have to go beyond modifiable. Currently, you are into a modifying situation. Everything around you is modifying, including your chitta. So what you do, you stop the modifications. It will take you to a non-modifying thing which does not require any other enlightener, which is Purusha. Then how do I stop these modifications? By learning how modifications are taking place. That is a painful thing. That is a happy thing. Modification. So what do? Stop modifications. Stopping modification is Vairagya. Knowing the modification is taking place is Viveka. So use Viveka Vairagya or Yama Niyama, and then slowly stop the first external modifications. Objects affecting you is the first step. Then impression of objects in the mind affecting you, smrutis affecting you, that is internal aspect. You're moving step by step towards Vairagya, means going away from modifications. When you go away from modifications, the modifying elements in the Prakriti, your mind also being one of that, slowly starts becoming less modifiable. And amongst the three gunas, which is maximum modifying? Raja and Tama. Because sthiti is a sattva guna, chanchalta is rajoguna, alasya, because prakash is sattva guna, sthiti is tamasa, and chanchalya is rajasa. So modification has to involve sthiti, chanchalya. Prakasha is not generally towards the modification. Lesser modifications in the prakasha, that is sattva guna. So after inculcating these gunas, you will slowly, the yogi ascends towards a situation where he starts having lesser and lesser modification. After completely quietening the external modifications, he starts the control of the internal modifications through meditation. Why is it that the chitta alone cannot become enlightened? The answer to this is given in 20th Sutra, which says, Eka samaye cha ubhaya anavadharanam, meaning what? It is impossible to cognize the self as well as the subject simultaneously. It's an important sutra in Kaivalyapa. What Patanjali Maharaj says is, you can either cognize an object, perceive an object, or you can perceive yourself. Both at one time cannot happen. A perceiver can either perceive something or perceive himself. Both cannot happen simultaneously. Think about what the statement is. When I perceive an object, my chitta has become vishayakar. My intellect has gone through my eyes and indriya and covered this and perceived this as an object. So my mind right now is perceiver of this particular object. Now, when I'm perceiving the object, I cannot perceive my mind. A perceiver cannot perceive himself when he's perceiving an object. When I am a father of somebody, simultaneously I am husband of somebody, but both cannot coexist. It means my mind, me means my mind, my chitta, shall always be playing different roles. Role as a father, role as a husband, so that means every time, depending upon the perception, my role will be different. So I perceive a object as my wife, an object as a teacup. What is happening? I am constantly perceiving. I'm constantly perceiving. Have I tried to perceive myself? I cannot. That itself is meditation. Why it is difficult? Because my mind constantly goes to perceive something else. When you are perceiving something else, you cannot perceive yourself. Eka samaye cha ubhaya anavadharanam. You cannot be subject and object at the same time. When subject-object differentiation is gone, samadhi is there. See how everything is again falling into the same place. A thing cannot be a perceiver and perceived simultaneously. You can either be a perceiver or perceived. This exactly is the meaning of 20th Sutra. Since mind perceives with the light of Purusha, when using the light of Purusha to perceive something, it cannot perceive Purusha. Why Atman is not known to us is because we are not trying to perceive the Atman. In the light of Atma, we are perceiving things. Now, when you are perceiving things, you cannot perceive Atma. And when you are perceiving Atma, you cannot perceive things. A samadhistha yogi is completely oblivious of the world. Why? He's perceiving something else. In other words, simultaneous perception of two things is impossible. That is why. Then what is the solution? The conclusion is very simple. As long as chitta is the medium through which you are trying to perceive, you cannot perceive the real enlighter. That means Atman or the Purusha cannot be known by Chitta. Why? Because Chitta shall always be engaged into perception of other things and cannot retire and rest from all the perception. And suppose it retires, suppose Chitta is not perceiving anything, the statement itself is absolutely ludicrous. It is ridiculous, because if nothing is perceived, then there is no Chitta. See the oxymoron. When Chitta is not perceiving is a wrong statement. Perception is its nature. Vritti is nature of Chitta. That means when vrittis are not there, Chitta is not existing. And when Chitta is not existing, that means not perceiving anything, that is the time when the other thing is possible. But the question comes, if Chitta is not perceiving anything, and then if he is perceiving the Purusha or the Atman, that means is a perception of Atman vritti in the Chitta or not? If vritti is there, Chitta is present. Vritti is always towards an object. Purusha is not an object. So when Chitta is not perceiving anything, there is no vritti in the Chitta, then how Chitta can perceive Atman? Because if Chitta has vritti, that means it is going towards the object. And Atman is not an object. If it has to perceive Atman, and if Chitta itself is not present, then who perceives the Atman? See the logical dilemma. The greatness of Advaita Vedanta or the Hindu philosophy or darshanas lies in the fact that they go to the finest subtleness of the philosophy. Perceiver is absent. Yet there is something which cannot be called perception, but it is definitely there, and that is ultimate. This on paper also looks ridiculous. But not only that, it has been stated in proper logic, but has been experienced, so if that is the right word, by the yogis, and out of experience they are telling us. Gurudev calls it intuition, not knowing. Intuitively, you don't perceive, you don't feel, you are. Intuitively, you are what? Atman. That is why Kenopanishad is replete with those very cryptic statements. If you say you know, you don't know. If you say I don't know, you know. Because knowing is not the criteria of that. Then if knowing is not there, what is there cannot be said, because we do not know anything other than knowledge, knowing, experience. We only know experience, we only know knowledge, we only know knowing. All these three are absent there. Something which is there, but which is not knowing, what it can be, we cannot imagine right now. It cannot be labeled, because labeling comes under this sphere of experience. But in the older days of Vada Vivada, the philosophers were of very high, excellent order. The Buddhists came out with another philosophy. They said, look, there is no Atman. This mind, which is perceiving a thing, is enlightened not by Atman, by another mind. That means one mind sees a thing. One chitta sees a thing and that chitta dies. New chitta comes. That new chitta, uttaravarti chitta, gives us the knowledge of purvavarti chitta. The mind that saw the object is dead. Immediately the new mind comes and tells what the dead mind saw. This is what Buddhist people say. This is called alaya jnana. I know it's something little away from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, but during the time of Patanjali, there was a fierce debate between Buddhists and Advaita philosophists or the darshanas, Vedic philosophers. That is why this sutra has come. Chittantara drushye buddhi buddher ati prasanga smriti sankarascha. Buddhist people say there is no Atman. If there is no Atman, then who enlightens this mind? The new mind. From where the new mind comes? Behind there is another mind. So that means each experience is enlightened by the next mind that arrives on the scene. It is called mind cognizing another mind. Mind after mind after mind after mind. And that is how the whole world is. That is why every time there is a flux, there is a change. Vijnanavada. Then each mind, if it is changing, each perception, it is changing, all right, but there is nothing solid, stable in this world. What is that which is not changing? Buddhists say only shunya, nothing, void. Nothing is the only thing that doesn't change. And the refutation of that is this 21st chitta. Can mind be cognized by another mind? It's all philosophical discussion, but we have to gear up for that because we are in the Kaivalya Pada. The essence of philosophy is here. Can mind cognize another mind? The Advaita or the Patanjali Maharaj says it is wrong. Why? Chittantara drushye buddhi buddher ati prasanga. Buddhi buddhehi ati prasanga. Ati prasanga means what? This mind is enlightened by previous mind. That is enlightened by another mind. That is enlightened by another mind. How long this mind thing will go? It is called vithi, queue, long queue, one after the other, one after the other. It is called anavastha prasanga. This object is enlightened by what? Mind. That mind is enlightened by whom? Another mind. That mind is enlightened by whom? Another mind. This another. There is no end to it. And this is called a logical fallacy or anavastha prasanga, which Patanjali Maharaj calls buddhi buddhehi ati prasanga. That is one problem. Second problem is, what about the memory? The first mind has a different memory. The second mind has a different memory. Third mind has a different memory. There will be clash of memories or smritis or impressions or sanskaras. Right now we have smritis, but they don't clash with each other. Each smriti is separately stored. By whom? By the chitta. But enlightened by whom? By the Atman or the Purusha. That is why if we do not presume all knowing one Purusha as substratum, then we will have to presume many minds and many corresponding buddhis to cognize the cognitions, which itself is going to be a fallacy. Now the question is, if everything in this world is objective, even the mind, we call ourselves subject and these things as object, but we are also object. Everything in the Prakriti is an object only. Amongst the objects, some objects are in a position to perceive another object, so it becomes a subject, but there is no true subject. Our mind is not a true subject. Why? It is an object of somebody's enlightenment. The reason is, Anything that is limited by space and time is bound to be an object. The only subject to call himself as a subject is the one which is beyond space and time. And that is the last enlightener, because it does not require anything to enlighten, one, and two, it doesn't undergo any modification. There is no parinamitva. There is no parinamitva. That is where the 22nd sutra comes. Chittehe apratisankramayaha tad akara apattau swabuddhi samvedanam. Now the most important question that is being tackled by Patanjali Maharaj is, Chitta is jada, Chitta is an object, everything that is in Prakriti is an object. An object can never know a subject. Subject can throw light on the object and he can know. Purusha or the Atman is the only all-knowing thing. Rest, everything is known. The question is, I as a human being is also an object. Then how is it that the object would know the subject? Atma khyati, Purusha khyati, Atma jnana, how it will happen? Chitta is jada. Everything else is of course jada. But the finest refined product called intellect itself is jada. Then how jada can perceive Chaitanya? Logically it is impossible. That means there will be no mukti. We will never go out of Prakriti. Why? Because everything in Prakriti, including our mind, is restricted to time and space. That which we are supposed to know is beyond time and space. How the time and space bound man or the intellect is able to perceive that which is not bound by space and time, that is the real crux of the philosophy. How the limited can perceive unlimited and become unlimited. That is why it is said that yoga is like climbing on your own shoulder. Can you climb on your own shoulder? You cannot. Yet you have to do it. That is the final crux of the philosophy. The remaining sutras of Patanjali Maharaj are slowly taking us towards that aspect. How the absolutely limited adjunct upadhi called chitta, forget about the arms and the legs and other things, they are completely stupid. The best in this Prakriti that is available, the one that is closest, the one that has an ability, highest ability, is intellect. So the only thing in this entire created universe that is most refined, which qualifies to even do some efforts to realize it oneself, is buddhi, intellect. But the problem is, intellect itself is a jada. Intellect itself is an object. Now, how is it that it is like saying that the cup is perceiving me? Looks impossible. Yet it happens. That is what all yoga is about. How to make it possible for an inert, for an absolute jada, chitta, antakarana, to galvanize itself to perceive the Purusha or the Atman, Atmajnana. A step by step, stage by stage, completely described lucidly by those who went through that marg and reached there, is the real Vaibhava of Hindu philosophy. We are the masters of that. None else in the world has the authority, the mastery, the key to the success, the master key of emancipation. Not that it doesn't lie in other religions, but nowhere you will find such a lucid representation replete with personal experiences of giant souls called Munis and Rishis who have reached that stage. Not only done that, but out of compassion, Karuna, have written down their experiences, which we are studying in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So the coming sutras, we have already seen what world is, what object is, what is the relation between subject and object, who is the ultimate enlighter. Now is the discussion on how an inanimate, an absolute dumb chitta helps us in perceiving the ever effulgent Atman. That is the subject of coming sutras. Hari Om. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. We'll take some questions.
Hari Om. Sanjay ji, Rajendran here. So, there is a saying in Hindi, Aadat se majboor. So our mind is all set in Advaita Vedanta, that only Atman, the rest is all Vivarta. And it is proved also because yesterday what we have seen in the gone years, what we have seen are not existing as in the same form, nine-man form here. Everything we can perceive as changing. It's every time, every moment it is changing. And only the chitta, only the consciousness, the bodha is remaining. How you will know? Because all those who have lived yesterday perceived this world through the bodha only. And today we are perceiving the world through bodha only. And tomorrow the people who are going to take birth will perceive the world the same way. That is beyond doubt that it is proven and it is accepted. And our mind is well settled in this. And the only thing is that how we realize the bodha. And that is what we are making the efforts for. Now here, Prakriti and Purusha we can accept to a great extent because it is the creation of the Prakriti is the creation of the Purusha. That is okay. That also we can accept. Further, when we go, Purusha can only be self-illuminous. Then why can't we? If Purusha is self-illuminous, when he sees everything, he cannot see himself. That theory is not applicable to only Purusha. For the rest of the universe, it is applicable. How this difference between Purusha and Prakriti has occurred? What is applicable to the world should be applicable to Purusha also, no? Or how you think about
it? Can you just elaborate the question?
Purusha is self-illuminous and he can alone be self-illuminous. Yes. Isn't it? According to Patanjali. If he is self-illuminous, why can't we be self-illuminous? Where is that obstacle lies?
Yes, the obstacle in we are Purusha. There is no doubt about it. The present condition in which we do not realize that we are Purusha is because of our self-imposed limitation on the Purusha in us by covering the Purusha in a particulate compartment called Chitta. Purusha, Ganga in its own flow is ever flowing. I picked up some water from the Ganga in a small vessel. and started calling it as Ganga. And then I have been away from the original Ganga for such a long time that I even forgot that there is something called ever-flowing Ganga, because for me, Ganga was that water in the vessel. What happened was, Ganga got limited by that particular glass bottle. Similarly, Purusha, when it gets, or the Atman, Paramatman, when it gets delimited by an upadhi called chitta. So that means restricting, delimiting, parceling, making particulate thing out of the whole sun. The sun was ever illuminating. I took a small part of that light through my mirror in my house and started calling my house as the world. So it is not that I am not Purusha. It is not that I am not Atman. It is that presently I am not aware of the fact that I am Atman or I am Purusha. And this forgetfulness, or this which is called avidya, has come because of my assumption of my asmita or ahankar or delimitation. The whole process of yoga is to, or any marga, jnana marga, bhakti marga, is to unfold and remove the limiting adjunct. The limitations are removed. To the extent the limitations are removed, to that extent Purusha is perceived. When the limits are completely broken, you are the Purusha. That is the process. So that is why Purusha is ever present. Unfortunately, because of our conditioning, because of our individualization, because of we becoming jiva, because of we getting restricted by intellect or chitta, we have started creating knowledge through experience. Purusha has a knowledge, full stop. There is no through experience, because experiencing involves limitation of chitta. That is the only difference. The whole exercise of spirituality is nothing else but to remove the limiting factors of any jiva, which is getting delimited because of individualization, which is happening at a field called chitta or antakarana. It is the same chitta which binds or delimits. Incidentally, it is the same chitta which helps in unbinding or removing the limitation. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om, Sanjay Ji. This two sutras is mind-boggling. If you get deeper into that, it takes you round and round, and the whole day will go. What I understood, my interpretation is that anything bound by space and time is an object. So our intellect is considered as an object. An
Yes.
object, one person, somebody, an intellect, and in that case, intellect can be experienced also, no? I mean, physically experienced also, no?
Yes. Anything, and if intelligence is an object and every object is subject to an experience, yes, intellect can be. That is why those who are enlightened, they can see buddhi in a different form, in a different way, manner. And that is because buddhi is nothing else but an object, a refined object. Let us take an analogy. When you throw a light through a mirror, you know that the mirror doesn't have a light. It is coming from sunlight, but
Yes.
still you feel it that way. Now what you say, oh, look, the mirror is enlightening the whole wall of the house. No, sir, it is not mirror who is enlightening. Yet, it is superior to the wall because it has the ability to reflect. That is the only difference. So mind or the chitta, the only difference is it is the purest thing or the closest thing that can go to the original light. That is why it is something which is selective in nature, but the fact remains that even the mirror is also an object, The wall also is an object. So intelligence is an object. So one who transcends the intelligence looks at everything, because he looks at whole Prakriti as object. What to talk of intellect? All these gods, the Devi, Devata, Swarga, Suvarga, Sapta, Patal, everything is looked upon as an object by them. It is an object. Are you?
Yes, that means essentially, if you elevate yourself beyond the buddhi, then you can feel that this is a separate thing.
Exactly. That is why the statement is very simple. Transcending the intelligence is reaching to the Purusha or the Atman.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
Sanjay ji, just one clarification on the Buddhist part. Now, the Shunyavads are one particular sect, right? Or is this a general understanding in the entire faith?
No. The Buddhism has got a lot of divisions. You have Sautantrikas, we have Vijnanavadis or Alaya Vijnanavadi, then we have Shunyavadi. See, Alaya Vijnanavad are the people who say that they believe in one thing. We all have Prakriti is nothing else but flux of gunas. There is continuous movement. They get solidified, so we feel it is real, but it is continuous movement. In fact, Vijnanavadin or Buddhism, they believe in everything is transient. And you just experience it. So your experience is what you feel it is real, it is not. So they do not believe in anything permanent. The mind is also not permanent. Mind also keeps changing. Object also keeps changing. Experience also keeps changing. Nothing. They say, if you look at the flame, even the flame just a second before and a second after is different. That is why they say you cannot take a bath in the same water, dip into the same water twice. Because first dip is different, second dip is different. So what it means is continuous flux is what they believe in. They are called Vijnanavadi. And for them, there is nothing, just that flux of change. That is all. And what is Nirvana then? Nirvana is as long as you do not identify with this change, your Nirvana is done. That is why Atman and existence of Atma is not there in Buddhism for that reason. Then comes the question of Shunyavadi. Shunyavadi are the people, what they say, that if everything is in flux and everything is changing and it is bound to be changing, what is that which is permanent in this world? Agreed, everything is changing. The world, this air, this Panchamahabhuta, everything is changing. But what about something? At least there has to be. How can something be created which is constantly changing unless there is something which is solid substratum? To which they say there is no solid substratum. That is why they say there is only void. Nothingness is the permanent thing. Void or shunya is the permanent. Up to this point, all their logic goes parallel to Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta or the darshanas, including Patanjali, it says that yes, everything is changing, agreed. But beyond that, there is no void. There is something which is pulsating. There is a positive presence of something beyond everything changes. In Buddhism, there is negative nothing beyond everything. In Advaita Vedanta, positive something. So we call it Satchit Ananda. Ever blissful existence is there beyond the changing, which is non-changing, permanent, aparinamavadi, avikrutavan. While Buddhist people say beyond that there is nothing, because nothing is perceived. And Advaita says, look, don't put the condition of experiencing anything, because experience is something which you know. See, today you know a jalebi. That doesn't mean gulab jamun doesn't exist. Similarly, you know experiencing an object. That doesn't mean there is something other than experiencing is also present. Difficult to imagine, but it is there. And that is the difference between Buddhist and the Advaita philosophy. Hari.
Hari.
Om Sanjay ji.
Yes.
Yes, Rajendran ji was asking something.
No, this is a big point, where my friends who are, who believe in this Buddhism and who always argue with this void thing. I ask them, how can we have something out of nothing? Is there any logic in that? Unless Bodha is there, how can this world be existing? This point of my question, they can never answer satisfactorily. This dispute still continues. And as long as we believe in Advaita Vedanta, I am not going to accept their theory, because this is not the way our acharyas have taught us. Right?
Correct. Absolutely correct. Even Buddha himself was completely silent on this aspect. Buddha himself in person never spoke about Shunyavad, never spoke about Vijnanavad. Buddha's entire emphasis, to the extent even when he was asked by Ananda, his disciple, about the presence of Atman, what he was of the opinion that he said it is Avyakruta Prashna. That means he says whether Atman exists or not exists, just keep it aside. First, you do your exercise and reach a stage. Next, all answers will come automatically. Those are immaterial at this moment. Even today, we are discussing all about Atman, everything, Purusha, all theoretical discussion. If steps are taken to reach that stage, answers at that stage are completely available and different. So, philosophical speculation is one part of it. But because philosophical speculation is basically a map in the hand, so that you know where to go. But having a map in the hand doesn't mean we have started walking. That's why Buddha was silent on all this aspect. Shunyavad, etc. came. That is all because of the contribution of course, they were enlightened philosophers, but they were definitely not to the extent of Patanjali Maharaj. So Nagarjuna, Asanga, Dinanga, Vasuki, Atmaghosha, all of them. If you read Nagarjuna, unfortunately, he's called Einstein of India, because he was the first one to talk about relativity in his book. So difficult a book to read also. Even an attempt to read his philosophy is so difficult. So that they were not less intelligent people. But the fact again remains that who has spoken out of experience is the ultimate knowledge, which our acharyas have done. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om. I'll explain.
Hari Om Sanjay ji. It's a very enlightening session. Actually, knowing things through mind and chitta is limited, and knowing it is whatever we perceive is not complete. That is a great revelation. Most of the time we feel that something which is correct, my intellect is correct, but that is not correct because it is coming through my chitta. It is limited, and there is a way to know intuitively things beyond the limits of the chitta. Is a great revelation. So thank you very much. And I request all, let us contemplate on this point with day-to-day life. How can we do something, and come back with questions to Sanjay Ji. With that, I like to conclude. We'll close the session, Sanjay Ji.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.